Welcome very, very much to Conversations. It's a pleasure to welcome to Conversations a dear friend of mine and the universe, and that's Alice Slater. And Alice is a wonderful human being. I've known her for a very long time. She's an ecologist, a deep ecologist. She's a lawyer. And among other things that I congratulated her mightily for, because we resonate to the same principle, she's a defender of animal rights in terms of industrial farming, which I take my hat off to you for that and all your good work. And we're going to talk about atomic energy and other matters. And Alice, welcome so very much to Conversations. Good to see you. Looking great.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
All that good, clean living, right? Anyway, share a little bit your background, okay? We're going to show a clip about this film that just came out about atomic energy, and it's the thing that you got interesting take on and everything. But share your own background. You're a lawyer, I guess. And,
yes, I went to law school when my children were grown. I had been a teacher, a suburban housewife. I actually got engaged in world work during the Vietnam War as a housewife, when I learned through intelligent media at the time that Ho Chi Minh went to Woodrow Wilson in 1919 to help end the Vietnam, help them get the French out of Vietnam. And we turned him down, and the Soviets were happy to help. And that's how he became a communist. I was quite surprised at that.
History is interesting when you get in some of the details.
And that same night that I learned this, the kids were rioting at Columbia. They had locked the president in his office during the war, the Vietnam War. And I had to do something. I felt like I had to get active and show.
Frances Fox Piven. I loved her. She's crawling in windows and things in Mark Rudd. And as I conveyed to you, I was at the University of California at Long Beach, and we closed down the university at Long Beach over that war. They had that napalm that burned to the core.
Terrible.
They killed 3 to 4 million people. Probably.
So anyway, I just...
Southeast Asians,
then... Years later, I went to law school when my children were grown, and I was working as a regular lawyer, and then I saw this thing in the Law Journal. They were having a luncheon for the Lawyers Alliance for Nuclear Arms Control, and I said, that sounded interesting.
What year is that you...
That was in 84.
84,
And I learned more about nuclear weapons than any person should ever have to know, and the key thing that I learned that a lot of people aren't aware of is that we actually promoted nuclear power to make nuclear weapons more palatable. Eisenhower wanted to overcome the public revulsion at the bomb and establish this Atoms of Peace program because he was advised by his National Security Council that in order to get people to accept the bomb, let's show them the wonderful peaceful uses, and that was, we pushed nuclear power, and they couldn't even get it going until they passed this Price-Anderson Act because GE and Westinghouse didn't want to go near it. It was so costly. It's totally subsidized. Even today, it's totally subsidized. So that's, I got involved, and I realized that this is, every nuclear power plant is a bomb factory. That's why we're having this terrible runaround with Iran, because they're legally entitled to have nuclear power. They signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. They promised not to get bombs. And this Non-Proliferation Treaty is a bargain that says if you promise not to get the bomb, we'll give you the keys to the bomb factory. We'll let you have peaceful nuclear power. And so then they, once they have the capacity to make weapons. So that's... I've been working very hard now to shift the paradigm to sustainable energy and not to have to rely on...
you've been doing that for a long time.
Well, I think things
you know the Lovins and everything, they've done great work that way.
Terrific.
And James Henson has been there too. And it's tied into global warming as well, don't you think?
Well, you know, I came at it from the nuclear end, but actually...
But it also involves the whole energy equation
but I
has
mean,
to be considered,
now... in order to really handle the climate, we have to put all our resources into solar and wind, and and nuclear is very expensive. So if you put money into that, you're actually losing the ability to reduce more carbon by putting money into that expensive technology.
Right, so you've been involved in it. When you did law, were you doing general law?
I was doing general litigation practice. It was civil litigation.
Yeah, my daddy was a lawyer. I was raised on Clarence Darrow for the defense. a good book, I would suggest, that
Very
kind of
nice.
thing. But you've been doing that work. You've been doing that. You've been doing great work in terms of peace and that sort of thing, and I congratulate you all on that. I've not caught up with it anything like you have. I've been following it, and we're going to want to talk about that because we're going to do a couple programs this week about atomic energy, and we're going to be focusing, and you are going to take a look at a little clip, just the beginning of a film that was aired recently, as we're all aware, on CNN and so forth, that is talking about atomic energy as a source of electricity and that kind of thing. It's a big, big issue, and where atomic energy is, we can't put the baby back in the bottle. If it hadn't been for Albert Einstein, we wouldn't have written the laws of physics that made possible the unleashing of the energy, atomic energy.
But, Einstein said that we have to change our way of thinking. So this is what we have to do.
He said
it's true, you can't go back, but it doesn't mean you have to be at the effect of it and have it threatening all life on Earth.
Yeah. Well, I don't. You think it? I don't think anything threatens whole life on Earth. I don't think.
Well, not you.
Not life.
Not
but
your life.
life.
I'm saying humanity.
Yeah, humanity.
Human
Well, that's something.
Well, that's something I care about.
Yeah, right. I got grandchildren.
I mean, I love animals, but I do care about people.
Well, I really thank you. I really think there ought
to
to be a real thing that the way they treat those chickens and the pigs and the things like that is unconscionable. Industrial farming. It's just particularly, it's something I've been really in tune with for a long time. Yeah, and there's a sense of ecology in that, and also there's the idea of the raping the planet, just agriculturally and so forth. There's a lot of issues.
We've been raping it a lot of ways to Sunday, and that's because the corporate system is out of control, and this is a time that we have to look at it in many ways. The way our food is supplied, the way our energy is supplied, our water.
That's right.
They're trying to privatize water. They're selling us the water we drink. So
isn't that something?
They've gotten out of hand, and we have to push back. And I think this is a time for that.
Well, you were against the Vietnam War. That's what got you into a political take on things?
What got me into it was I was going to show those kids that they didn't have to riot and storm the president's office, that we had a political process. And I went down to the Democratic Club. I believe in democracy.
Good for you, yeah.
So I went, and I was very naive, but I went down to the Democratic Club, and they were having a debate between the Hawks and the Doves, and I joined the Doves.
Now, this is 66?
In Massapequa, Long Island.
67?
68.
68, okay. And crucial time,
That was when the Columbia riots happened. That's when I discovered the truth about
Ho
Chi Minh.
When I and my gang closed down the University of California in Long Beach.
We were all
really
working.
But
I was very proprietary. No, I mean, I was very middle class. I wasn't a radical. I just wanted to show these kids.
I think of you as radical.
I know now.
I think you're radical.
I don't think so.
Real radical.
I am.
Oh, really, really
but
radical.
But at the time, my thought was I was going to prove that the political process worked. Democracy worked. So I went to the Democratic Club. They were having a debate between the Hawks and the Doves. And I joined the Doves. And within a month, I was running Eugene McCarthy's campaign on Long Island. And of course, we lost. And then we took over the whole Democratic Party for the next 4 years. We took over every little door-to-door.
There was a lot.
We nominated George McGovern. We captured the nomination. The mass media had no idea. They kept saying Muskie is ahead. And we were like going door-to-door. We didn't have internet, phone calls. And we got re-elected the majority of the delegates to that convention. We nominated George McGovern, who was totally anti-war, anti-poverty, And the convention was filled with women and blacks and gays and youth. It was like the 60s manifested itself politically.
Yeah, that was a magic time.
And then the media destroyed us. They never wrote a word about what McGovern stood for. They hounded him to death over his vice president, Eagleton, that had a... he had been hospitalized years before. Years before, he was a Missouri senator, And they treat him like a hippie.
Yeah, right.
And they never allowed that kind of an open
Well,
process again.
In my mind, I have great admiration for the hippie and the beats and the
but
people
who
are really leading a lot of that kind of peace stuff.
I'm not making fun of it. I'm just saying how the media portrayed it and how the middle America took it. Or, McGovern only won Massachusetts and Washington, D.C. He lost every other election, and that was because of the media had a real plot to not allow his message to come through.
Right. You remember the message when Dr. King came at Riverside Church in 1967, where he really, really did lay into them all. And that war was just getting out of hand. You got 3 million, 4 million. I think they were laying the predicate for all the Khmer Rouge nonsense and that happened as well. It was a horrible kind of thing, and there was a great stirring. That was also the time of landing on the moon. That was Mr. that, and then he had the Woodstock Festival.
Yeah, well,
that was. Were you at Woodstock?
No.
You wouldn't have been there. You were still.
I was very middle class. I was a housewife. I was raising my baby.
All right, well, that's a good thing, and everything like that.
But anyway, are we going to watch that?
Well, we can if you want. Yeah, and now it's worthwhile because I've known you and Kevin Saunders, and they're doing great stuff and everything. And you're peaceful, a peacenik, which I take my hat off to you, obviously, for, because peace is something in large. I'm kind of taking interest in things that are going on now with Iran negotiations, Syria, and all that stuff. There's a lot going on. But this idea of the energy is something you've been interested in for. You were picking it up way back then.
I think sustainable energy, when we're getting all our energy from the sun and the wind and the tides and geothermal, that we can have peace on Earth. I mean, like the wars are over energy resources, the people, I think that's like a prerequisite, because then every nation can access the abundant, free energy of the Earth.
Why haven't we done that?
Because
did it require the development of certain technologies that made it feasible, where we had to come upon?
We have all the technology now.
No, but why didn't we do it in the 19th century?
Well, we didn't have it.
We
were using whale oil in the 19th century.
Yeah, I know, but I'm asking you, what is it that happened in our time, our lifetime, let's say, or our lifetime of our kids, and that made it possible for us to tap tech? Because we have a unique...
Well, we've had 500 years of the Industrial Revolution, and we're now at the end of it with all these new discoveries, but yet we can't keep producing stuff because the Earth can't take it. We have to start a new wave of conservation and Earth consciousness, because we see that we're polluting the Earth. We're worried that the climate is going to kill us, so we could have, unlimited nuclear war that'll destroy humanity. So we're at a turning point.
You're saying a lot of really interesting things that we can. Now, I'm trying to get a historical perspective, if I can, is that we can destroy humanity, comes trippingly off the tongue. That has not been available to humanity throughout 200,000 years.
Until the nuclear bomb.
Well, it wouldn't have been available right at the moment of the nuclear bomb. There had to be a lot developed after that.
But there were rapidly. We had 70,000 bombs 15 years later on the planet.
Yeah, we had them. And remember in '82 when we got 1 million people? And were you in Central Park?
No, I was in law school.
You were in law school, okay.
I didn't become a nuclear activist until after.
I remember that. Boy, that was something. It was June 12, 1982. They had over 1 million people. Every street in Manhattan was packed with people who were
So what did we get?
exception.
And they changed the message. It went from nuclear disarmament to nuclear freeze. So they froze. Did we get rid of them? No. What happened? We had 1 million people in the street with the war in Iraq. We still went to war in Iraq.
Were there that many?
There were.
Remember,
there were 1 million
Amy
people.
Goodman led that thing. The whole east side of Manhattan was a crowd. I was marching then, weren't you?
Yes.
Did you get out and march?
I was there. I was up on the dais talking too.
Were you really? Good for you.
With
a lot of good
Pink
people.
And Leslie Pagan.
But the thing is, the technology, we have a unique capability to, we have a self-reflective consciousness. That is Homo sapien as opposed to, let's say, a crocodile or something.
Right. We have the wherewithal to solve our problems.
Well, but it also gives us the ability, those cave paintings in France 30,000 years ago were depicting, or images of goddess figures and things like that. They had the ability to do that. But we also had the ability to extend our consciousness in the use of technology. We can make
but we're at the end of it now.
Okay.
In other words, we have to be very careful what we produce. I was just at a conference at the UN during this disarmament week, where they're talking about getting a treaty to stop robotic weapons, like killer robots. I mean, it's bad enough with the drones where a guy is sitting at his joystick shooting somebody on the ground, but now they have robots that we can send out and program with no human intervention. I mean, we have to really take a time out and see where is this planet going.
Right, and I couldn't agree with you more. But the ability, there's a difference between wandering around in the wilderness and finding a cave you can shelter in, and building a house with air conditioning.
Building a house, right.
You know, we can make the world different. Gordon Child wrote, "Man makes the world."
But you have to do that with energy. That's why this nuclear power thing is insane.
Yeah, it is.
Because that is not sustainable. You have the nuclear waste lasts for 250,000 years. I mean,
pretty long.
All of recorded history is 5,000 years. What are we thinking? How could we make one more ounce of it?
250,000.
Yes, and they don't know where to put it.
They don't know where to.
They don't know where to put it. They couldn't bury it in Yucca Mountain because they said there'd be water seepage, and they couldn't guarantee it even for 10,000 years.
Right.
So it's crazy to make even one more ounce of it if you don't know where to put it. And it's the most toxic substance on Earth. I mean, if you took a pound of plutonium and distributed it theoretically so that every man, woman, and child on the planet got a portion of that pound inhaled, it could be a lethal dose of lung cancer.
Well, okay.
That's how lethal.
Okay, it's okay.
So
that would be a development that is lethal. You could say evil, if you wanted to have a certain viewing of things, whereas opposed to the good things.
I'm trying to be just practical and factual. It's lethal, whether you want to. I suppose something that we create that's lethal is evil, but it's not, it's just a moral argument, but it's also factual and common sense that you wouldn't want to do that.
Did you know, you knew Carl Sagan, right? Who did the Cosmos?
Did you know I didn't know him personally.
I never met him either, but I knew his wife, who was Lynn Margulis. Did you know of her? She was probably our leading biologist, I would think. And she very likely could be, and she passed just the last couple of years. I was very saddened by that. She was a major biologist and wrote definitively on biology, and she got sort of marginalized in the minds of some of the scientific people when she had association with Lovelock. The Gaia principle, are you familiar with Gaia? But this sees the whole this sees the whole connection of the evolutionary process and universe as organic. That there's an organic element in the universe.
Is there any question about that?
Well, there's a question in the minds of some scientists who will say you can't take her seriously because that's getting close to spirituality and things that aren't hard science.
But we have to look at science as being very paltry. It's very, it falls short. I mean, it's very left brain. It hasn't integrated intuitive knowledge. It's in a dead end. It invents nuclear bombs, nuclear power, killer robots. I mean, that's where that scientific brain is going.
You seem to have a brief against killer robots.
Yes, I do.
So do I.
And any kind of killer. As a matter of fact, I think
killer robots.
What we were talking earlier, I think that it's science is like a left brain activity, and you have to integrate left and right.
Right. Yeah, I think that's something.
And I even went to this interesting meeting in India. They had the Indian Coalition for Nuclear Disarmament, and they had a workshop with scientists. First of all, there was a Dr. Muya Reddy, a physicist, who was saying science has to have boundaries because, like the German scientists, the highest scientists, they were calculating scientifically down to the ounce how much gas they needed in the chamber to kill a certain amount of people. I mean, that's what science was being used for. So you have to always look at science as what is it being used for. It has to have an ethical and a moral backing, and you can't just let them go willy-nilly, And they were saying in that meeting
Yeah.
that maybe they separated the institute, like science, from the humanities, so that the scientists aren't integrated with their own humanity. Like they're not.
Yeah, who was who wrote the book Two Cultures? That one about that. Yeah, I forget now. The art and the science and that. But that issue is a big one and everything like that. And the energy issues are important, and all of these things. It's a time. It's a time of crucial transformation, it would seem, which probably people have thought over for a long period of time, but it's crucial now in a way that's qualitatively put up on the table. Oh, Lynn Margulis, let me just say.
Yeah, we go back to the Gaia thing.
Yeah, the Gaia, well, also Rupert Sherlock and other things that take into account this more comprehensive inclusion of both yin and yang, or male and female, black and white, all this kind of east and west and all that sort of thing. We want some sort of comprehensive thing. And she became, toward the end, she passed, like I said, a year or so ago, sad and everything. But she was getting very, very suspect of the very taking note that it's very dangerous. The scientific process, we have a scientific process. Let's say, so you have certain ways of approaching knowledge, ontology or epistemology or anything like that, and that she was very worried because it was becoming so overly politicized. Everything was being taken over by economic considerations.
Corporations,
and everything.
Yeah, and making money on it.
And
that's where we are. We're at the end of that industrial revolution. We had 500 years of the corporation. It started with the Dutch West India Corporation, where they had limited liability, so they could go out and rape and pillage and plunder, and they didn't have to be responsible as individuals. You know, you could get a fine to the company, but nobody went to jail for it. And it's now at the end of that process, because the earth is under stress. You know, we're facing catastrophic climate change.
Terrible thing in Manila.
There are 20,000 nuclear bombs on the planet that if a sizable number of them went off, you could end life to all humanity on the planet.
All humanity.
Yes, we're at this crossroads.
Yeah, but that's
time to look. I mean,
it's only happened just yesterday. That we couldn't do that in the 19th century.
Right, but we didn't see the Earth until 1968 when we saw the vision of our Earth. This is all impinging, and
everything's moving now exponentially. It's like a quickening in a pregnancy. You had birth, you gave birth, so there's a quickening where you get to the end, and then also in evolution there is a long process, steady state. There's a long process, and then there's a quickening, and then there's the
we're in celestial speed up. We're in celestial speed up.
I think so.
But the other thing I think is very interesting, like there was a lot of chatter about the Mayan prophecy that the world was going to end.
Yeah.
But actually, we dodged a bullet. The world didn't end. But actually, that 5,000-year cycle that the Mayan archaeologists and historians said exists, that came to an end. And so I think there's new energy in the universe. The fact that we didn't go to war in Syria was like a miracle.
Wasn't that something that
was
happened?
Extraordinary.
Wasn't that? I was watching. It was like a popcorn thing going off. All of a sudden, they were going to bomb.
All of a sudden, we're sitting and talking with
Iran. What do you
think
of Mr. Obama's position? I think he's taking a very enlightened position. I'm in support of the man, even though you got this healthcare thing coming out now and all that. That'll get straightened out. But on the whole, I think there's a chance of making a lasting peace with Iran.
I think he's at the effect of it.
I think that's huge. That he may be making.
You want to know how to make peace with Iran? I'll tell you. We have to give up our nuclear weapons, and we all have to give up nuclear power. Because right now, Iran's going to get nuclear power because they're entitled to it. There's this crazy non-proliferation treaty that says if you promise not to get the bomb, we'll give you the keys to the bomb factory, nuclear power. And that's what Iran is promoting, their legal right to this. If we really want to make sure that Iran never gets the bomb or anybody else, we have to give it up. We can't be straddling the empire, saying, I'm entitled, but not you.
Well,
and we can't tell Japan and Brazil that they can enrich uranium, which they do, but not Iran. I mean, what kind of law is that, where you're saying it's okay for one country and not for another?
Well, it's the law which it seems so. Okay, maybe we can. You're going to take a look. There's energy questions, but we're okay. Anyway. So yeah, there was a show. Let's say it was on CNN. I guess a lot of people watched it, not as many as thought. And you're going to watch a little clip that we did just from the beginning of that was aired on CNN. You'll take a section to what they're trying to say. But anyway, they're doing that. And there is James Henson and others saying the only way we can deal with the climate change is to utilize atomic energy, which is something you take.
Well, let's watch it and not. Yeah.
Let's watch a little clip. It's about 7 minutes. And we're talking with Alice Slater. And she's an advocate of abolishing any truck with atomic energy, I guess, or something. And that's fair enough. There's a lot of people who feel that way. But maybe we could set up that tape. It's running about 7 minutes or so. So, Drew, maybe you could put it up. Pump it in here, please, if you can.
For the rest of time. Well, why doesn't President Obama know this? He's an intelligent man. He's got 2 little girls he loves. What the hell does he think he's up to supporting the nuclear industry? It's wicked.
Do you mind if I use the F word? Can I use the F word? We hear all these nuclear plants right away because we can switch to solar, wind, tidal, geothermal, ocean thermal. All that energy is available to do today. We can shut all the nuclear plants and all the coal, all the oil, all the gas plants. We can shut them down. We have the technology. It's called Solartopia.
As a lifelong environmentalist, I'm against nuclear. But what if what I've been thinking all this time and what my friends have been thinking all this time is wrong?
It's been interesting to see how people respond to my pro-nuclear power position, because they respect me for my books about nuclear weapons. They know that I'm a liberal Democrat, and they're puzzled.
I was against nuclear power. All I had to say was 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, atomic bombs, atomic weapons. My mind was made up, definitely. So I needed a lot of input. Research I did, and scientists I interviewed, and so on. Going and visiting and seeing for myself.
I was under no doubt that my whole career and my whole reputation as an environmental activist, communicator, was at risk if I talked publicly about having changed my mind about nuclear power. I'd have been much better advice just to keep my mouth shut. But I couldn't do that.
Whenever you change your mind so radically, like those of us that have become pro-nuclear have changed our minds, you start to wonder what you were thinking. I mean, what exactly was going on? You know, the more you peeled that onion, the more strange things you figured.
The atomic radiation issue in Tokyo from the nuclear power plant at Fukushima Daiichi. Now, today, 4 of the 6 reactors there remain in states of danger.
A nuclear accident is one of the biggest media stories it's possible to have.
Reactor number 3, this is the one whose fuel contains a mix of plutonium.
In my first blog entry, within the first 2 or 3 days of it happening, I didn't know what the scale of the radiation release was going to be. I didn't know whether people were being injured. The fact that this was happening live on TV and that there were explosions, you know, this was a nuclear power station blowing up. Clearly the situation was out of control.
The Chief Cabinet Secretary has asked the residents of Tokyo not to hoard bottled water.
And so you had these awful images of total devastation from a tsunami. And the story was a nuclear power accident. It all got muddled together.
Some people on the west coast of the United States worry that radiation could travel 5,000 miles.
I hadn't been pro-nuclear all that long before the Fukushima plant started to melt down. It's hard to watch that happening and not start to question whether or not this is an energy source that is really safe.
Radioactive isotopes will likely reach California, but experts say those levels are so low they certainly fall within safe limits. Now, a large network of radio monitors is keeping close tabs on all of this. The environmental
long-term effects, obviously, still to be determined.
I thought, I've got to keep my head. You know, I could completely lose it here, and I could just panic.
What do you think, Mark?
I feel like a bit of an idiot, actually.
Why?
I don't know. Because it's sort of... I'm wearing radiation clothing. It shouldn't be necessary. It must be absolutely awful to have your town wiped out by a tsunami and earthquake, and then you can't even come back and rebuild because the whole place is contaminated by radiation. Even if it's not massively contaminated, it's contaminated enough that it scares the shit out of you, and I think that's, you know, nobody can look you in the eye and say you shouldn't be worried. And you know, and there's no other energy source that does this, that leaves huge areas contaminated by this strange invisible presence which you know is potentially deadly. You know, everything has its drawbacks, everything has its risks, but this is something which is unique to nuclear. I guess I can understand why people are scared of nuclear power more. You know, it's kind of eerie. So I would say I'm having a wobble. I can see why we'd want to do without nuclear power. I really can. This parking lot is the hottest spot in the whole exclusion zone. This place got some serious fallout, I think.
So you still pro-nuclear?
Am I still pro-nuclear? Ask me in a few days when I've had a chance to get my head around it, right? Are you still pro-nuclear?
That's it. So that was a little clip at the beginning of it and everything.
I think it proved my point.
You think it proved your point?
That
so that's
part.
a good. Yeah, that
but
part.
You know,
they'll go on to make their own case.
You know,
yeah.
but their case is that global warming is so serious that we have to have nuclear power to alleviate it. Now, I agree, that's true.
Because you know they're
but
just going to start getting massive methane coming from the Arctic.
Let me finish. Global warming is a terrible threat.
Yeah.
But in order to cure it with nuclear power.
Yeah.
MIT did a study. You'd need to build 1,200 nuclear power plants, and right now on the planet there are only 400. After all these years, it's impossible to build enough nuclear power to cut down the climate change. And if you took all that money and put it into solar, geothermal, wind, you would get much more carbon reduction, much more rapidly than the long time for nuclear power.
That's the premise.
Right.
That's the premise that's more or less accepted, and that's the premise that they're bringing into question with this film and this movement.
No, but that's not a premise that's accepted.
No,
the MIT study about how many nuclear power plants you would need to alleviate global warming, that's an accurate fact that you'd need 1,200.
Go back to Lynn Margulis saying that the scientific or knowledge or understanding of a reality is becoming politicized. You're taking a political view.
But MIT is not political.
Well,
I resent being called political. I feel like I have
not
studied.
Political. No,
I don't think I'm in a political point of view.
You can almost get anything you can get. That's one of the things that how do we get?
But science takes evidence, right?
Yeah.
I'm being scientific.
Yeah, but she said the scientific process is being submitted to political decisions,
right? But
not scientific truth. And people will say.
But Harold, if you're going to talk that way, you'll never know what's true.
Well,
are you saying you can never know?
Well, there is no.
There's not a weight of the evidence like we have in courts, where you have the weight of the evidence and then you make a judgment that this based on what I've observed of facts.
Well,
unbiased facts.
Now they're going to have a whole bunch of facts that they're going to put up on the table, and you're going to put up facts on the table.
You know what you sound like?
What?
Paul Krugman said that the way they're talking about global warming, they say some people say the Earth is flat, other people say it's round.
Well,
now that's ridiculous. The weight of the evidence is the Earth is round, and it's not being round. You think?
I think no. I'm sorry.
No, but I'm saying you can actually come to know the truth if you weigh facts and evidence.
Yeah.
That it's not they have a set of facts and you have a set of facts. I don't agree with that. There's a preponderance of the evidence. This is the legal concept.
Well, then let there be the discussion.
Right.
Right. There should be the discussion. You don't have all the truth. They don't have all the truth.
No, I have the truth.
Oh, you have the truth.
Yes, I've weighed the evidence.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. And
that's what I'm saying, and I don't. Their evidence doesn't stand up to mine.
Okay.
Their evidence says that there's no carbon footprint with nuclear. Well, the evidence is that the mining uses coal, the milling uses coal and oil, the reprocessing, the decommissioning is huge. You have to look over this waste material for 250,000 years.
Yeah, that's
it's so poisonous.
Yeah.
And all of human history is 5,000 years.
Just
think of the energy you'd have to spend to guard it and watch it. I mean, just over that amount of years, even if it's just driving a truck up to look at it once in a while.
There is all those costs. And the Yucca Mountain, they can't even get the Yucca Mountain thing.
No, because they can't guarantee that it'll be safe.
Now they're claiming in their tape that they're going to have the 4th generation atomic, where they're going to be able to take the waste and feed it in as part of the process. That's what they're claiming.
It's wrong.
Now they may be lying or something, but that's what they're claiming.
They don't have the facts appropriately.
Okay.
They don't have the right facts.
Right.
And I advise you to read Amory Lovins.
Oh, I know Amory Lovins.
He's written a whole book about this.
What's his wife's
name?
And
also, even if they could build all of that, you could get so much more carbon reduction if you put it into solar panels, windmills, efficiency.
Yeah. Well,
you just could. You're actually you're making global warming worse by building nuclear power.
What about the fact that we're urbanizing? As 80-90% of the world is becoming urban, and the demands for energy are going to be growing exponentially.
You know, Mark Jacobson at Stanford University put out a study in Scientific American. He did it for all of America, and then he did it for New York State.
Okay.
That by 2030,
we
could be totally off all fossil and nuclear fuel and rely only on solar, wind, and tidal and hydro energy, because
that should be up on the table and be consideration of our policy.
He's a Stanford scholar.
Right.
He laid out his facts. He said how many windmills you'd have to build. And he said, and if you think it's a lot, he reminded you that during World War II, when we geared up, we built like 10 times the amount of airplanes and trucks, than the amount of windmills we would need.
Willow Run, they were
so
tearing them
it's
out.
absolutely possible. Probable? That's another story.
Yeah.
There are great forces arguing against this. Corporations that are making money on fossil fuel and nuclear.
Everybody's making money.
No,
the
but
solar
they
energy people are
no,
going to make
but
money.
you cannot make the kind of money that you make on fossil fuel and nuclear because once the panels are in, the energy is free.
Yeah.
They're going to lose their cash cow.
No.
I mean, you have that installation cost, which you have for anything.
Yeah, that's
but then
true.
you
Those are
don't have
investment
to ever pay for the sun or the wind. It's
so
free.
that would seem prima facie to make sense that we ought to be using the solar energy as a way of getting ourselves off you want to conflate the atomic energy with the fossil fuel.
Yes.
Okay. The people that are doing this, and that's not just some people. James Henson, the leading people, the leading voice on the planet, is now Stuart Brand, and others are doing. They're coming around and saying that with the technological advancement, that the dangers have been overrated, and that there hasn't been that many deaths that have resulted from it. Except Chernobyl, there was, because they built it in a warehouse. It wasn't anything, but that they've been overrated in order to scare and conflate the atomic energy for peaceful purposes with the destruction.
I want to tell you something about Chernobyl.
They run a propaganda thing along those lines.
Let me tell you about Chernobyl. It was one thing where they said it was Russia, they weren't as careful, but Fukushima is all U.S. technology. So it has
and that fellow at the end, I don't know if you saw it, the fellow at the end was walking around with nothing.
What do you mean nothing?
That the danger that is said about the radiation and the contamination is way overrated to what it really is one of the themes of their thing. That there haven't been
then let's have the monitoring, They shut down the monitoring.
Yeah.
Do you know that our EPA shut down the monitoring?
What does that mean?
The Environmental Protection Association had radiation monitors that it was on the West Coast. It was, and they said, well, it's so low, we don't have to monitor anymore, and they shut it down. And the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty Organization, which has radiation monitors all over the planet to make sure nobody's cheating on nuclear testing. They are only giving their information to the IAEA, which is industry dominated. The board of the International Atomic Energy is corporations that make nuclear power sit on the board. So anyway, we're not getting that data either. It's all a big secret. If they're so sure that it's not hurting us, why aren't we getting the data? They're not reporting it.
And they're saying that there's...
then lately, the Environmental Protection Agency has raised the level of permissible radiation exposure. They just arbitrarily said, we used to say it could only be these many millisieverts. Now it's going to be this many. Why? Because there's all this stuff coming in for Fukushima. It's the gift that's giving. I mean, they just had this week that Alaska seacoast fish are being affected. It's going all over the world. It's constantly spewing. It hasn't been cooled off. It takes at least 5 years before they can take the rods and put them into dry cask storage. They're trying to take the rods out this week, but we don't even know how they're going to do that.
Why do you think the people who are doing it, environmentalists and so forth, are taking this? Why would they be taking this position against the obvious fact that we ought to get rid of everything atomic?
I have no idea.
What is your thinking?
I think they're terrified about it. I don't think they thought it through.
Oh, you don't think they thought it through?
I think they're terrified of global warming, rightly so.
Right.
Fossil fuel.
195-hour winds at Coriolis Force, and the lapse rate, and the thing, and we haven't even begun to get the massive release of methane from the Arctic. It's very, very worrying.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
But I don't think,
Also, and if I may, another thing is, when you say we can get enough energy or something like that, the wind doesn't always blow. I mean, that kind of thing.
It does offshore.
Well, okay, but in order to, we're going to have an urbanizing. If we're going to talk, Cervantes said there are only two classes in the world: the haves and the have-nots. Which is interesting. What does it mean to be a have? And one of the things that it does mean for the vast majority of the people of the world is they're going to need massive amounts of electricity for the people of the world, unless they want to live with a 5-watt light bulb and can live very parsimoniously.
This is so off course right now.
You think so?
You have to read Amory Lovin's. We
have
have enough.
Yeah, he's got that
between the sun and the wind is constant offshore in New York City. Let's take New York City.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
They can build it offshore, off the Rockaways.
Yeah.
Not only that, they can build it far enough out so we don't even ruin the horizon because it's a very shallow bed going out off Rockaway. Yeah. And the wind blows all the time over the ocean.
Yeah, there is true. And tidal power.
And then, of course,
dependable.
they are
geothermal also
in certain areas.
Yeah, certain areas. Yeah.
Anyway, they're also perfecting the hydrogen fuel cell, which you make hydrogen from the sun, the wind. You can make the hydrogen, store it, and when you burn it, the hydrogen breaks up into oxygen and water, pure water, pure enough to drink, no carbon, and you can make it from the sun, the hydrogen. So there's other battery technologies coming up and fuel cell technologies.
Plus fuel cells.
We really have all the invention we need right now to do it. What we don't have is the political will, and we have these corporations spending billions of dollars to, I mean, I got these glossy things in the mail about Indian Point safe, clean, secure, telling us we're going to be in the dark if we shut down Indian Point power plant upstate from New York City.
It's very close.
Common Cause did a whole report in New York State how much they spent lobbying the nuclear industry against shutting down, trying to get people to think that we're going to be we'll be sitting in the dark, like you were saying. We will be with a 5-watt light bulb. It's not true.
Well,
there's a lot of factual material.
Right. And all that factual material should be up on the table for informing the political process.
Why isn't it?
Well, I don't know
the Congress is paid off by the industry. The media is owned by the industry. I mean, GE owns NBC. They make the nuclear reactor. I mean,
that is true,
it's only a program like yours where that gets, public interest, where you can say the truth and no corporation is telling you can't air it if you say that.
Well, that is true. I believe in public access. I think it's a good thing because you can come and make television. And
I mean, even public television, which I was a public television wife. My husband was the first general manager of PBS.
No fooling. And PBS is great. I think.
And it was established because Fred Friendly quit CBS because they wouldn't carry the Vietnam hearings with McNamara and Rusk because they didn't want to lose the commercial reruns. And Friendly went to the Ford Foundation, got money, got PBS, the CPB established. And there were no commercials, and we were living in Potomac, Maryland at the time. And the Congress was already holding them up on the funding. And I remember I had a dinner party at my house with Herb Schmertz, the vice president of Mobil Oil. That was
I did a program with him. I know
that
Herb
was
Schmertz.
The first grant to PBS. And they were having this Talmudic discussion, how big should the credit be? And how long should it run? And it was Mobil Oil was supporting like Hollywood television theater. It wasn't political.
I did a program. I got it in my archive with him.
I actually wrote to them. Monsanto sponsored an agricultural series on PBS. That's how corrupt it is. So you want to know why we're not getting the real story about sun and wind?
It's part corruption. It's part of a pattern of corruption that is endemic. So how is it addressable? What do you think of?
Well, that's why we need your kind of show. We need the internet. We need, we need to get the news out in different ways.
And it's got to be things up on the table, including everybody should have. There's a term in cybernetics, and the cybernetics is not only information technology, television, things like that. It's also now like Isaac Asimov, back to that grand fellow who wrote the laws of robotics. It's also robotics. So robotics are taking over the productive process. They're coming exponentially as fast as the information technology. So that would be the basis for us re-examining our theories of economic theory itself.
Well,
Keynes, Schumpeter, Marx, our thing, and also the overall context of the whole human scenario within an ecological context has to be seen in a new light.
Can I tell you something about economics?
Yes,
First of all,
tell me, you did
I
say.
ran a nonprofit called Economists Allied for Arms Reduction.
Okay,
and
good.
we had, that was after I left
Thank
the law.
you. Arms reduction by all means.
And we had 15 Nobel laureate economists on our board.
Wow.
And it was right after the Cold War, the wall had fallen, and we thought everybody's going to be
89,
ready
90,
for
something
economic conversion. And all. And then you saw how entrenched this military-industrial complex was.
Thank you, Mr. Eisenhower.
But anyway, I thought they were nuts because they talked about externalities.
Yeah.
This is how they calculated the
Hazel
cost of
Henderson,
things.
present your credentials. Hazel
Well, I became
Henderson's
friendly
wonderful.
with her.
Hazel Henderson's
Because
wonderful.
these guys,
externalities,
you know, the cost of the environment, the cost of pollution, the externalities, so they was never factored into the cost.
It doesn't compute in our computers.
Right, and that's why we were so skew off base with our economics.
I agree with you, but we need to have a basis at a level of capability, that we have a capability, like you and I agreed, that we have a capability to destroy the Homo sapiens species that we've not had except now. We've never had it out of history.
Right.
They've still got the same old geopolitical...
But we've never had the resources at our command, like with the internet, with the science, the developments. You know, I said
that's like what Bucky Fuller would call living rate as opposed to killing rate.
Right.
That's growing just as rapid. We can now take care of people in a way that we couldn't do historically.
Right. And
people were, you know what I mean?
And that's what we must do. That's why we have to abolish war.
Well, I would be all for that. War is horrible.
I think war is very 20th century. I think we're getting to that point where we're seeing that, which is what happened with Syria, that we didn't go to war.
Yeah. But
that was the first.
That came, and it looks like we were going to bomb them, and got himself over to the red line about that and everything, and then in comes Putin, and then that happened. It was like popcorn machine going on, and then a thing with Iran.
Yeah.
There may be opening a window with Iran now, maybe. There might be opening it, which would be a monumental kind of thing if it can be pulled
We have
off.
opened it. We just hope we won't let other bad forces close it.
Well, I know. So that's all. And one of the major questions is going to be up on the table. There are things that should be up on the table of knowledge that should be conveyed to the general society in a mass kind of educational kind of way that doesn't seem to be coming out of the educational process. People come out of education now and they're just burdened with debt and everything like that.
Well, that's
and
because
everything's
of
tied
this
into them getting a
imbalance.
job or something. It's all tied into
But it's the
labor.
imbalance.
The labor theory of value that maybe doesn't hold anymore.
This
that
is like
informed
what
Marxism.
happened at the turn of the century, where we've gone the other way now. The rich have gotten so rich, the poor have gotten poor. The 1% and the 99%.
You know Ramsey Clark.
Yes, of course.
He's a patriot of the highest order, right up there with Snowden and everything like that. But Sarah Flounders, who works well with him, I love Sarah. She's really good. They did the War Crimes Tribunal, People's Tribunal, in 91 or 92 against the invasion of Iraq, which was horrible.
I had a chapter in their book on depleted uranium.
Yeah.
They put out a book after that, Depleted Metal of Dishonor.
You mean the International
Ramsey
Action?
Clark.
Yeah, Ramsey Clark is the big... He was at the Voting Rights Act and all that stuff, and he was Attorney General of the United States.
And his father stepped down from the Supreme Court.
Tom Clark was an Associate Justice, of the Supreme Court. But Ramsey, anyway, she said that, and it seems validatable, that the inequity of the economic inequity in the United States of America now is greater than it was in 1789 France.
Well, that's why we had Occupy Wall Street, and the police shut it down.
What happened to it?
The police shut it down.
Yeah, well, Mr.
It's still
Bloomberg
going.
City had a 33 million man army, the police department, to break it up with clubs and things.
Look at this wonderful new election.
Yeah, well, okay, there's their whole...
We elected a guy that ran on...
What do you think about? What do you think about that? De Blasio is a whole different thing.
It's very hopeful.
You're
very
going to
promising.
Mr. Bloomberg?
Not at all.
Not at all. No.
No. Well, there were a couple of things I liked. On religious liberties.
Yeah.
When he insisted that the mosque could go downtown, I thought that was good.
Yeah, He's going to be a change, though, right? It might herald
De Blasio worked with the Sandinistas when he was a kid. I mean, this is like radical.
So there may be. So the overall question, we're coming to the end. Thanks for viewing that tape, and everything like that. And we're trying to get at it. And there should be things up on the table, and things should be unvarnished, and not all. Vance Packard, I did a program with him. He was great in terms of how they can manipulate people with
what we need
stories. What we need is just
here's a story.
Yes, dear.
We had the Manhattan Project to build the bomb.
Yeah.
We need the Bronx Project to clean it up. And the
Bronx Project.
Right. And
Why Bronx?
Well, because it's funny.
Oh, okay, good
but
enough.
the Bronx Project
is
to clean it up.
Yeah, right.
So it has, because we talked about the Manhattan.
Right.
Manhattan is glamorous. Bronx is like not so glamorous.
Very good, yeah.
And it's to clean up the mess of the industrial age. And nobody who worked
clean out the Aegean stable, I think it was in the game.
It is like we have so much restoration we have to do, restoring and sustainability and
there's so much promise in a certain way if we get things right. So I guess the question, we got a couple minutes left. Are you optimistic, pessimistic for the human prospect?
I'm always an optimist.
You are an optimist.
And there's one other thing I wanted to... because I can see that there are solutions.
Yeah, right.
But what's missing is the political will and and the other thing is the word economics we should take back, because the root of economics is economos, which means household.
Okay.
And we have to treat our households appropriately. That means for everybody living in the house. That's what economics is for, not just for the 1%.
Yeah, you're not singing the praises of the 1% and trying to get a grant from them or something like that. Apparently.
No, there's more of us than them. We're the power.
99 is bigger than 1.
That's why I'm optimistic.
Yeah, you are optimistic that we might be able to come up with some solutions. It's amazingly, incredibly important and interesting times we live in. And one of the major questions is the energy equation. And it all ought to be up on the table, and it ought to be try to get down to where it becomes less politicized, perhaps. The whole question into right and left and right and wrong and all of that. And there might be some blending. I think what they're trying to do is conflate atomic energy with the solar energy people. Conflate the two. That may be something that they're trying to open, and it's worth considering.
But that's hubris. I mean, Bucky Fuller said that the only safe nuclear reactor is our sun.
I know you sent that in the letter you sent to me the other day.
Miles away.
That great quote. I'm going to put it up on my page.
195,000 miles, whatever it is, 9 million.
97 million miles.
But that's, we have to be realistic about whether nuclear power can ever be handled safely.
Well, that could be brought up. Some people would, well, it's a point that can be brought up, and it seems to be being brought up by a number of people that are worth listening to. And one of those who has had a very interesting take on that for a long period of time is this young lady in Manhattan named Alice Slater, for which I thank you. All the good work and everything like that. Here. And it's your pleasure to have Alice's word. We're going to have a few more words about this on this programming. I think it's important where that issue is going to shake out and everything. But thanks a lot for all the good work, and let's keep working for those chickens that are locked up in those cages that ought not to be. They ought to be walking around in the meadow. Don't you